Welcome everyone from my side again. My name is Matthias Höbinger. I'm one of the co-founders of ShapeDiver and the CEO. And I'm happy to welcome you to our Fall 2024 update webinar. I'm excited to have all of you here as we dive into the latest updates from ShapeDiver, including a deep look into our most important new feature, the App Builder. The reason I am personally so excited about App Builder is that it's a huge step towards achieving a key goal that we've had since the founding days of ShapeDiver, actually, and that's to empower computational designers. Because let's face it, computational designers are software developers, a very special type of software developer, of course, but you do build applications, and amazing ones, actually. And Grasshopper is a powerful and versatile and intuitive programming language. But what's missing, in our view, for far too long, is a method of deploying or publishing these applications to a broader audience outside the Rhino or Grasshopper ecosystem. Of course, our platform has been there now for several years, and we've allowed you to host and run and share your Grasshopper models in a scalable, secure way. And there's also Rhino Compute that came along a little bit later as a do-it-yourself option to run Grasshopper files on a server, but to really build sophisticated interactive applications with nice user interfaces and complex interactions with the 3C scene. To do that, you always needed still a significant amount of web development skills and resources, and that makes projects more complex and more costly. And that's what we are solving now with the App Builder. It allows you to not only build user interfaces parametrically in Grasshopper, showing images, charts, text, and much more, but also to control the way users interact with your 3D model itself. And this really, in our view, changes the rules of the game, because now you don't need anyone else to build and deploy applications. No web developers, no JavaScript wizards or front-end frameworks. Everything really happens in Grasshopper. The amount of web development you need to know now is essentially the same as just embedding a YouTube video on your website. And based on everything we've seen over the last couple of years, this will really make many Grasshopper-based projects happen that previously might have been too complex or too expensive to be approved. It will also increase the value of having a great team of computational designers in your company, because they will be able to build and release both internal and external tools rapidly without expensive external resources. So these are exciting times for us here at ShapeDiver and hopefully for you as well. And so it's great that we can use our next hour or so to introduce you to all the great new features that we added to ShapeDiver and the App Builder in particular, and to show you how you can use them to build apps. Here to do that are my colleagues Mathieu Jarl and Edwin Hernandez. Mathieu is our head of product, responsible for the beautiful way all of these things are coming together, and Edwin is our lead parametric designer and the head of projects. So essentially our user-in-chief inside the company, who spends more hours in the weeds with them than anyone else, essentially. They'll be showing you live demos, walk you through some of the most impactful use cases. And of course, at the end, we're all going to be here to answer your questions about new features or anything else you want to know about ShapeDiver. So without further ado, I'll hand things over to Mathieu and Edwin. Please enjoy the presentation, and I can't wait to hear what you think about it. There you go, Mathieu.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome again. I think I've already seen in attendance a lot of familiar names, so happy to see everyone and also the new members of the community. So I will run through, well, a bunch of new features that we have. We are focusing on App Builder, as Matthias said, but I'm also going to present a few other new important features. Several of them involve interacting directly with geometry in the web browser, which, recreates to some extent in the web browser some of the workflows you could have in Grasshopper before. So select geometry in your Rhino document and then trigger computations, or reference geometry and trigger computations. These new tools allow a bit more to get to this point in the web browser and in online in ShapeDiver, and they shine especially in the context of a builder as well. So we're gonna look at this in this context, and at the end, give or take the time that we have to talk about some more. We obviously have a lot of other smaller features, but some of them are features that have been requested by users a long time, so they're also important, and we'll try to go through a lightning round of the let's say smaller scale but also important features. So at this point, I'm not going to see you or the interface of the webinar. So please, colleagues, if something wrong is happening with my screen, let me know. But I guess I should start with a bit more context of what the app builder is. I'm not going to go extremely in detail because I feel like we've been repeating ourselves in already one webinar and a lot of posts, and now there's a lot of documentation. So I'll keep it simple and translate in slightly more technical terms what Matthias already mentioned. If you're familiar with ShapeDiver, you know that for years now, you've been able to upload Grasshopper definitions, maybe prepare them a bit with a ShapeDiver plugin. And once you upload your definitions, they could typically look like something like this, which is what we call the ShapeDiver view page, the model view page of the platform, which essentially represents your output geometry with some materials that you could maybe set up in Grasshopper. And, well, essentially the list of parameters that are available in this model that you've exposed in Grasshopper to be able to control them in the context of a web browser. On top of the parameters, and I'm not going to go through everything that's available there, but one significant thing is the ability to export files, again, from the application, whether it's CAD files, images, PDFs, a lot of files, and those are also available in their own panel here. And as you might be familiar with, this interface is very static. You get, as in a batch of parameters that you can, control a bit the order of and group in Grasshopper. But in terms of influencing the layout of this page, this was always quite limited. Limited also in terms of logic on this page. So the interface is static. There's no way to adapt it to the state of the current model. So to make it contextual, if you want. And on top of that, it is also limited to, on the left, a 3D viewer, and on the right, a list of controls, parameters, and exports. But that's it, right? And the app builder, in a few words, is what allows you to go from this version to a version that is essentially also a web browser with controls, etc., but that goes beyond all the limitations that I just talked about. So, for example, with the ability to have contextual interfaces here, if I want to export my file, I can switch the file format, and I see options that are specific to the format I chose. So we can see the interface itself is contextual, and it's driven also from Grasshopper components. And I can also visualize data in different ways. For example, here I can enable the nesting and represent already in my web interface an image previewing the nested files that I produce in my algorithm, right? So, and as you can see also, the layout is structured, organized into containers, left and right, with different tabs, etc. And all of this, again, is completely dynamic and can be driven in Grasshopper, right? So the idea here is to start by getting an overview of how one can go from this version to this version. And as I mentioned a couple of times, this is done entirely inside Grasshopper. And this is done using a new set of components that we've added to the last versions of the plugin. So we're in constant move here, so they're evolving quite fast. But you might have noticed the new app builder section of the plugin, which already contains a lot of components, and it's still growing. So here, in order to introduce these components, I wanted to start with a simple example where I have this algorithm. It's one of the classical models that Daniel Piker created with Kangaroo, which allows to take an input mesh with panels and to optimize the various faces of this mesh for planarity, right? And then if you optimize, you have access to these options, the number of iterations of the algorithm, and the strengths of the planar factor that you want to have in your optimization. As you can already see here, those two parameters, and that's a limitation that exists also in Grasshopper, not just in the model view page in ShapeDiver. Those two parameters here do not have, well, here it does a bit, I'm not sure why, but they do not have an effect if the optimization algorithm is not running, right? So they're contextual to the fact that the optimization is running in my model. So we can see already that this simple model would benefit from an interface that only shows this toggle at first, and once the toggle is enabled, could also show these two sliders as additional options for the optimization that is running currently. Additionally, in this case, that's the main contextual information I would like to add to this model. On top of that, for such a model that presents an analysis, it would be interesting in the interface to add some data analysis visualization. So maybe in this case, we will see I'm adding a table with some statistics about the optimization and the planarity of the panels that I got, and also a simple chart, a round chart to classify the different panels. The last thing that I would like to add in my interface, and actually maybe I should start by showing the interface, is the ability to go a bit deeper in an analysis of the model and select each panel to get some data about each panel that I've optimized in my algorithm. So we can see here, before I go a bit deeper in the various components of my model, I can show you the final app, which also has, in this case, left and right containers. And I can, here I have a selection component, one of our new components, where I can go through all the panels of my model, select one, for example, this one, and feed this information, which element was selected, to Grasshopper. And here I just have a simple panel where I show the planar tolerance of this panel, which is at this value currently. And here, for example, if I start optimizing my model, I can switch this toggle on. And as I've mentioned, first of all, here I get these additional parameters once I've enabled this toggle. Second, of course, my data visualization here has updated to the current data I'm seeing. And we can see also that my selected panel, the selection stayed, and that the tolerance for this panel has updated in my interface. So if I go back to my model, and that's the only model where I'll go a bit in details about the new components to show how it goes before we move on to other models, and Edwin will then go to a very complex model at the end to show the power of these new features. We can see that here I try to organize this so that my main algorithm is contained in this group here. And here I have two types of outputs. I have here my display output, where I display the mesh with colors for the different panels. And we'll see that I use some attributes. We'll see in a minute why. But I'll start with showing, going through this group, which shows the app builder component itself. And as you can see, we conceive this component as like something you can use also on your existing models. It's not gonna weave in or modify the way you build your main algorithm. You can keep your main algorithm independent by itself and start adding app builder components to your model, which will tell the platform when you upload your model, this is an app that I want to, for which I want to control the layout. I don't want to just build my 3D geometry. I want to also build a full application. And you might see that, you might notice that these components are organized as a tree. So the idea is that you have here the app component, which allows to say, okay, this is my, as an output of this model, I want to include, to build a complete app. And the other components trickle down from this app component, which is the output of one of the outputs of the definition. So in this case, I have my app component, and I can go back from the app component and go back to the components that feed it before, because it really represents the structure of the app as a tree. So in my app, in this case, I include two containers, which I name left and right. So these names are reserved names, which indicates the app builder that I want one container to be on the left of my screen and the other one on the right of my screen. And then inside of these containers, I include, in this case, I didn't include tabs. I can structure things in tabs. But in this case, I directly include widgets. On the left, in the left container, I have one parameter widget, which includes several parameters, my selection input, the optimization toggle, which I just described, and the two optimization sliders here that I have in my definition. So as you can see, the way to build a parameter widget is just to add this parameter widget component and feed it the names of parameters that exist in my definition. So in my case, I have a toggle called optimize, a slider called planarize, and a slider called max iterations. And as you can see, of course, since all of this is parametric, I can include some logic directly in the interface of my application, right? So in this case, you might notice here that I have a toggle which is connected to the optimized toggle, and a filter which decides that those two sliders here are only shown in my app, so they're only included in the parameter widget if the optimized toggle is set to true. Right, so that's what the logic that creates my left container here. The right container goes a bit further with further components of the app builder. On the one hand, it includes a round chart widget, so the one that you've seen here. And the round chart widget here is a component with a lot more options. You can you have a lot of options to define the styling of the chart, etc. But the idea is that you feed it round chart data here, which is another component of the app builder, and I here feed it directly data that's included in my model. So a list of names, in this case, of data I want to represent, a list of values. So in this case, I have the number of panels per tolerance, domain, and 3 colors. In this case, I give it 1 color per type of data, right? So it's all pretty standard. If you use Human UI or other plugins that allow to represent data, it's quite similar. On top of that, this panel includes 2 text widgets. One is a text widget where I used Markdown to build a table. So in this case, I used a quick cluster to help me. We're gonna probably make this a component in the future. But you use like standard Markdown formatting to create a table, which then gets interpreted in the app as a table like this. And I have another text widget, which, as you've seen, as I've explained, shows the tolerance of the panel I selected in my definition. So that's one thing. And this is the next thing that I'm going to show in this model now, is that on top of using the app builder, I used another of the new features of ShapeDiver, which is the selection input, which is a new type of input that we added to the plugin. I'm saying it's on top of the app builder, but at the moment, these new inputs, and I'm going to show there's 2 new ones plus a new one that's coming in the next few days. In the future, they'll be available in ShapeDiver as a whole, so also in the model view page, so in as an independent ShapeDiver feature. Right now, we've used App Builder as a sort of lean way to implement these features, and right now, those new types of inputs are only available in the App Builder. Okay, so I now will explain briefly how the selection input works. So I added it to my definition here. I have this one selection input. And the idea of the selection input is that I can use it to filter geometry in my definition, and so in my online model, so any geometry that's displayed in the online model, to say, okay, these items, I want them to be selectable by the users of my app in the end. And once they're selected, trigger a computation, just like what happens when I update a toggle or a slider. When the users select something in the viewer, I want to trigger a computation which sends as part of this component. So it works a bit like if you've used it, the direct text input, right? Which lets users enter a text and sends the value of this text to the definition. In this case, the select panel sends the name of the object that was selected in the app, right? So what does it mean, the name of the object? Well, that's where I can go to the display part of my definition. First of all, what's important is that this only works with if you're using the GLTF2 display, so our most recent display component, right? Because this component supports some attributes stored inside the objects. And again, that's like quite beyond the scope of this webinar to go back on the attribute system of ShapeDiver and all of the different features, but we've had for a long time now these attribute components in the plugin, which allow for each object that is sent to display as an output of the app or the model. You can inject attributes, various types of attributes, some for materials, for example, a name. If you're exporting this geometry, you can set layers, colors, names for the exported documents. In this case, what I'm doing is that I'm in each of the panels, so I have to send them independently in this case, and each of the panels that I'm sending to the display components, I'm storing a name. Essentially, the name is just panel underscore the index of the panel, which, you know, I have an ordered list of panels that I can then use, and that is also used. It's the same order that I use to send the data that interests me as part of the outputs. So in my case, I have a display component that I call panels. So the naming the component is also important. And in this component, I have a list of named objects called panel underscore 0, 1, 2, etc. And now I can go back to my selection input to close this loop with the display component and set in my name filters that I want all the objects that start with panels dot. So that's we support the wildcard notation. I could also just make a couple of panels selectable in my model. For example, panels.panel underscore 1 and panels.panel underscore 238, something like this. In my case, I want all of them to be selectable, and since it would be a bit cumbersome to select them to list them all, I use the wildcards notation, which says that all of the objects contained in my panels display are selectable. And that's what closes the loop, which allows me to make objects selectable and send the value of which object is selected in my definition. In this case, I use a few components here to parse and just get the index of the panel that was selected. And I use this index, as I mentioned here, in this text widget in the app builder to show the tolerance value of the selected panel in my interface. Okay, so that's pretty much the overview. A bit fast, of course, but the overview of like the main features that we have added in App Builder. And before I move to the next feature, I wanted to make a quick detour in our help center to emphasize that we've currently updated, recently updated the Grasshopper section with a new tutorial definitions section, which are completely updated with the latest version of the plugin. And for each of the definitions, you have several categories for basic example, inputs, outputs, images, JSON, app builder. So including the app builder, you can always open the model. In case of models built with the app builder, you can also check the app directly and download the definition, which each of the definitions that are here, I can show you briefly. They're even a bit more organized than what I'm showing now. And they are basically hands-on tutorials on how to use all of these components, right? So you can spend more time with the examples to go a bit deeper than what I'm showing now. So the next feature that I wanted to show is
to know it's almost 5:30.
Yeah, sure. I'm on time with my plan. So the next feature I wanted to show is the second input that we've added so far in the inputs category, which we've called the Gumball input. And that's an input that looks very much like the the selection input, except on top of allowing you to select objects, it allows you to transform them directly in the viewer using, as the name indicates, a Gumball type of widget in the online viewer. So here I have also a very simple definition with several display components. And here what I have is that what I want to do is make an app where I can move those two core objects here, this box and the sphere, to update this sort of lattice, which is, you know, this metable lattice that I'm creating using those two core elements. So in this case, I could, if I'm doing like this, yeah, here, what I do is here, instead of using these plain inputs here, so it's plain inputs because, for example, in the case of the ball, the orientation changes the way the lattice is structured, right? And instead of this, I want to allow this as inputs in my end definition. And here I won't go in all the details. By the way, I'm going to add this example, exactly this example, to the documentation this week. I added two Gumball inputs to replace this, which essentially makes this job of replacing these components that you can directly control in the Rank document with telling my definition, okay, I want to leave this up to the users of my online app. As you can see, they look like the selection inputs. You can also filter. So here I have those two yellow objects here are in a movable display component. And there's two, which I give a different name. I have a box, the box and the sphere. So I have here a component that allows me to select and transform movable.box, and a different one for movable.sphere. I'm using two different ones because here, if you look at the other options, I can, in my Gumball, show or hide different things. And for example, for my box, I want to show both the translation and rotation handles, but for my sphere, I only want to show the rotation handles. So here, using these components, we can look at the final app, which is here. And you can see that I created here I kept the interface simple, so it's all on the right here. And I can select my box and start moving it using a Gumball. And I insist all of this is doing without code. That's all controlled through Grasshopper. And use this transformation to update the output geometry I see in my app, right? And of course, all the traditional parameters are also available to be played with and updated. All right, so that's like, again, was like a fast overview of all of the app builder as a whole and some of the new other features we combine with app builder right now. And now I'll leave it to Edwin to go a bit deeper in the app builder and show how to go deep with the selection, and also use another feature that's in progress but can already be used concerning dynamic parameters. And I'm trying to find the webinar window so I can pass the mic to Edwin now. Yes.
Okay, thank you. Let me share my screen. Do you see my screen?
It's loading, yes.
Yeah.
We see a builder, yeah.
Now do you see Grasshopper?
Yes, we see Grasshopper.
Perfect. Okay, let's start with the app builder. So let's have a look first at this example. This example is to analyze a neighborhood in Barcelona. And the idea of this one is that, well, you can select here a block in the neighborhood, and then here you get some parameters that I am in Grasshopper dynamically showing. Now I know that the block number 2 is selected, so I show all the parameters that refer to block number 2. And I show here additionally some charts with information regarding the gross floor area, build versus open area, so some analytics that I can have a look at. This model, it's here in Grasshopper. And then if we have a look at the app builder part, I will just show quickly the same thing that Matthew showed. So basically, I have here a container, which is the left container, which is the one that contains the parameters for the blocks. And then I am adding some names of these parameters, block, and then I'm going to replace this with the number of the block. If I know that is number 2, then I put here the number 2, and then in that way, just by using strings, text, and sticking it together, then I know what are the names of the parameters that I have to show in the left side of my app. Now, the problem of this app is that right now this app needs a lot of parameters. So now that I zoom out, you can see this insane amount of parameters, because basically I need one parameter for each block, and even one parameter for each building, because I also have some parameters referring to buildings. So of course, this is not very scalable. If I wanted, for example, now to maybe analyze a bigger section of my neighborhood, maybe now it's not just 3 by 3 blocks, but now it's, I don't know, 6 by 6, double the size, then imagine I will have to add here even more sliders, and well, that's completely difficult to manage and to maintain. So then is when we are gonna I want to introduce also a new feature that we have, that is custom parameters. So custom parameters allow you to in the fly create these parameters. So let's have a look at the second example that I have here. So in this case, you can see that I have some global general tab, which allows me to, for example, select the amount of blocks that I have. So in this case, I can have, well, I have here this block quantity with up to 10, but actually I could have here any amount. And then when I go to edit blocks, I used now the feature that Matthew already introduced, which is the select feature. So if I go start selection, then I can hover in my blocks, and then I can select one of my blocks, and then the parameters appear here. And this happens on the fly. So how does this look in Grasshopper? Let's have a look here. So here, as you can see, I don't have any more this insane amount of parameters. Now it's very clean. And the reason is because, again, I'm creating all of these parameters on the fly. So I'm doing a combination between the selection components and these new components that I want to introduce, or this new feature that I want to introduce, which is the custom parameters. So when a block gets selected, I have a text structure, a ID structure, something similar to this, building 1 or building 0, 2. In this case, buildings 1 means like I'm selecting block 1. And in this case, building 0, 2, that means I'm selecting block 0 and building number 2 inside this block 0. So that's basically what I'm going to get back here when I select a building. That's exactly what I'm getting there. And when that happens, then I can do what Matthew showed. I can then extract the data. Let's connect one of these examples. So let's say I get building 1. Then you can see I'm also in Grasshopper setting, okay, building 1 is going to go red. And then I just do a split of my ID. So I know basically the ID, the index of my block and the index of my building. In this case, I'm not selecting a building, so I get null in the building, but I get that I'm selecting building block number 1. So now where do we create these parameters on the fly? Here we have a section where I get custom parameter values. So basically, let me go back here. Yeah, so here I'm first building these parameters. Right now, those parameters are defined in JSON format, but we will soon release these also as components in the app builder. So you will not have to set up this as JSON. But basically, these JSONs tell me everything about my custom parameters. So I have the same that you saw before, the block size, courtyard size, block corner, etc. But the reason why they need to be created on the fly is because each of these blocks can have different defaults. So when I am in this block, then I can change the size to, let's say, 0.6. Let's go do it even more so it's more visible. So it's very small block. And then if I go to another one, now my block size will have to jump from 0.5 to 0.7. So somehow I have to dynamically change these values, and that can happen with everything else. So that's why we have to, on the fly, we have to dynamically create these parameters and change, in this case, the default value or the value, but you could change everything that you see here. No, I could change the minimum, I could change the maximum value of this slider, how many decimals it has, etc. Depending on other constraints. Everything can be driven through Grasshopper. So basically, that's what I'm doing here. I'm taking the values of my model and putting them into these JSONs. I just want to show here the final JSON, and then we will move on to another example. So you can see here this JSON now contains also my values. So the previous one didn't contain the value, and now this one contains these values, value 0.7, value 0.5. So I'm dynamically adding this value, and then I send that to the app builder. So I know now that I have now these parameters with these specific values. Everything done dynamically. So this is what allows us to now have an infinite amount of blocks here and create these parameters on the fly. Another example is this one. This one is a bit more basic in terms of geometry, but I think it gives the idea even more. Here I used, in a, let's say, creative way, the select component, the select feature that now we have. So I can start selection, then I can click on this plus, and then let me reload this. Maybe it's because I had it open for a while. Let me try again. Yeah. Okay, so here basically I am in 3D, in Grasshopper, in 3D, I'm creating these icons. So it's just a texture with a plus, it's a mesh with a plus texture, or a mesh with a minus texture, that's all. And then I make it so that you can click it. No, so I can again show you, I can click on that, and that sends instructions to my Grasshopper file. I can start another selection, and I also made, for example, the cabinet selectable. So I can select on that one, and this one is going to give us a different instruction to the Grasshopper file. Now the instruction is create some parameters on the fly. So here we have a similar situation in which in the first one we had an X amount of blocks. We don't know how many blocks we have, so that's why we have to on the fly create these parameters. And something similar happens here. No, we don't know how many cabinets we can have. At the end, the user can add as many as they want, and that's why if we create these parameters on the fly, then we can give them all of that freedom. And I can start changing here my parameters, width, depth, height. And when I go to another cabinet, you will see that dynamically my parameters go back to what this cabinet really represents, which is a 500 millimeters cabinet. Let's go back to the other one, and you will see again these parameters will switch again. So you can see everything done dynamically. I could also click here in the remove, and then I get completely remove that cabinet. And then, of course, you can imagine the infinite amount of configurations that I could do with this, because now I can create cabinets in any size and in any place that I want. So how does that look in Grasshopper? Let's have a look. So, well, a lot of this is happening with the select. So let's have a look at what the select component tell us. So here we have this component that Matthew already showed, the select input component. And if I right click on it and I check the filters, then we can see here that we have 3 filters enabled: the cabinets filter, the add filters, and the remove filters. And as Matthew said, all of that is done through the GLTF name. So if I go to the other end when I'm displaying my geometry, then I have the same cabinets, remove, and add. Exactly the same that I have in my filters. And additionally, I have some IDs in every single of these geometries. So here I have some IDs in my cabinets. And if I check the add one, I also have some IDs here, which will allow me to identify what was clicked. So I know that an add icon was selected, but then I need to know which one exactly was selected. So if we check here, should have here some local testing. So if I, for example, connect this one for testing, yeah, that one is not gonna work because probably it's from old models, but I can check one of these ones. So if we check the names, I can see that I have these IDs, and the way that I'm doing these IDs, I mean, it's a very rough way, but I know it's gonna be always unique because I'm using by basically deconstructing the points, and in that way creating an ID. The points are basically where my icons are. So if I check here are my icons, and here are the points where my icons exist. And through this point, I just deconstruct the coordinates, and I create like a quasi ID in that way, which will allow me to know which ID, which icon did I select it. So for example, here, let's test with the number 0 here. So if I say, okay, the user clicked the icon of type add with this ID, then if I check, let's see what happens, and I see that is this icon in this side. So that's before I select anything, and that's after I select. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking this ID and I'm comparing it with the coordinates that I have. So let's have a look. I have here the ID. I check. I have here my selected ID, and somewhere here I should be able to compare it with my icons positions. So I have my icons position here, I have my ID here, and then with that I'm able to know the icon number 0 was selected. Then I take basically the edge. I have here all my edges, which each of them represent an ID. And that's how I say, okay, in this side, I'm gonna add now a cabinet. Similar happens then with the remove, for example. The remove, I think, is easier to understand because if you see, I have here some IDs of cabinets, and that's the same IDs that I'm using for remove. If you see here, I'm adding the same attributes for the cabinets and for the remove, and the reason is because one is going to tell me I want to edit this cabinet, and the other one is going to tell me I want to remove this cabinet. So I can do the same, and I say, okay, I want to remove cabinet 1404. So if I test here, I say I want to remove cabinet 1404, and then basically that removes my cabinet that I had here in the center. So again, this is before, and this is after. So I'm using here the selection as an instruction. The user selects something, and that's basically sending an instruction to my Grasshopper file. And then in that way, I can do something. And then the other one was, well, I want to show the parameters so that the user can edit that cabinet. So I think it was cabinets. So we check add, we check remove. Now we have cabinets. So if instead of removing, I just put cabinets, then this one is not going to do anything in my 3D model, but this one is the one that allows me to, when I select the cabinet, it allows me to then show these parameters that then the user can edit. So here we have the same. I'm extracting the ID, and here I'm also extracting the type, the action type, let's say. So I have a remove action type, a cabinets action type. So if I check, okay, where these cabinets action types go, then I have it here, and then here is what I'm saying. Because my cabinet was selected, then I want to show the width, depth, and height parameters in the right container. So if it wouldn't be selected, if this will be inverted, then I'm not sending those parameters. then I'm just showing the show icons and edit cabinets parameters. Those are the two ones that we have here. But if I select a cabinet, I want to also add the width, depth, and height. And I want to add them, like how do these parameters look? And I have that down here. So it's again JSONs for now. But this JSON describe my parameters. So if I expand this, we will see them here: width, depth, and height parameter. And the value is basically the value that I have saved of these cabinets. So the current size of it, so that it can also dynamically change depending on what I select. Yeah, that's the main idea. Do I have more time to explain more, or is that good enough?
We are 5:50.
I think maybe let's keep a few minutes. Maybe I'll take back the screen and we can do the lightning round of what we didn't talk about yet.
The drawing tools?
Yeah, including the drawing tools. So
Okay.
I think I have to make myself presenter again. I'll make presenter. All right. But thanks, Edwin. So I think that was the idea is to start with my, a bit dumb, simple examples, but keep in mind with, that with something like Edwin's magic, it's really limitless what one can build with the app builder now. But as you've seen, maybe in the way the Edwin's definition is structured, those new dynamic parameters, custom parameters that he talked about are right now built using JSON objects, which is a more, let's say a prototype version of this new feature. So it's already available. It can already be used in App Builder. But of course, we also use this to develop, iterate fast on features, test them, get feedback, and then make more final versions of them, which will come in the form of new components for the app builder, right? So just like we have all of these components to create image widget, text widget, etc., the ability to create custom parameters will be available as part of components and a new app builder feature as a whole. And that's also the case for another feature that is already hidden behind and available in App Builder and will be released as a component now. I can safely say in the next few weeks, but let's say before the end of October months, is the drawing tools, which we've talked about a long time and took more time to iterate and perfect before we wanted to have a really functional first version. But the idea is that just like I've showed, actually I'll go back here to this one. So just like I've showed a couple of new selection input, Gumball input I've showed, the drawing tools is gonna come in the form of another new input called points input, right? Which is gonna look a lot like these ones. So in the end, the ability to tell the app that I want to let the user draw a polyline, closed polyline, open polyline, or just a bunch of points, a cloud of points, and send back these points that were designed in Online Viewer to the definition to be able to inform the Grasshopper algorithm, right? So this feature has been available on the API side for a while now, and now we're talking about imminent release in the plugin as well. And I can, so this is an example you might have seen in a couple of videos or announcements we've done in the past, but just to show that even if the UI is not completely ready on this side, we will, in the app builder, have the same type of inputs we have for the Gumball input, the selection inputs, allowing to enable, let's say, the drawing mode, and either start drawing from scratch or edit polylines directly in the Online Viewer here, right? So that's something, and of course then when the editing process is done, send this information to the online Grasshopper algorithm and use it to update the model. Right, and here what took a long time is, among other things, the interface, how to really make this useful in a lot of different use cases. And for example, here adding points comes with hovering in the middle of existing segments. The ability to hide or show the labels in the interface, right, for the distances between points, and also a lot of settings that will be available either directly in the component in Grasshopper or in the settings of the model, but the ability to, for example, restrict how many points, the minimum and maximum number of points the polyline can have, if it should be closed or open, and how to restrict it. And it will be able to restrict it to a plane or to existing geometry directly in the viewport. Right, so that's one of the additional features of this round that I wanted to mention. I think I have time, if we want to leave a bit of time for questions, to mention two more features. One is the feature that we have had a lot of requests over the years about, and we finally added to the plugin. In this case, it's not even in beta now, so you can see the final components here: create stream and zip streams. And this feature is the, sorry, I didn't open the right model. It's this one. It's a feature that allows, well, finally to export multiple files at the same time using the ShapeDiver export components. So in this case, what you can do is define several file exports as streams. So using the create stream component in your model. So here, if I enable it, I do it. And here, for example, I create a stream that contains a DXF file and another one that contains, I think, a 3DM file. And I combine them using this zip streams component, which combines several streams into a single one that represents an archive, right? So in my case, I build an archive containing a curves.dxf file and a meshes.3dm. And then I can send this to the traditional export components, either the direct export or the email exports that you might be familiar with in ShapeDiver. In this model, I have two examples. Actually, I have also a second one where the archive depends on my model. So here, for example, I can change the number of segments of this building structure here, and the number of files that are sent to the archive here depend on the number of buildings here. So, for example, here I have 8. So by driving parameter, by modifying parameters of my model, I can actually also dynamically decide how many files are contained in my archives. So in this case, here, if I have just 3 segments in this model, and I enable this archive and export it, I'm gonna export a single zip file containing three segments of I define my model. So that's another feature that's available now if you have one of the latest versions of the ShapeDiver plugin. The last one I wanted to mention is maybe a bit more for a more restricted number of users. It's for the users that use the organization features of ShapeDiver. And what we did on this side is to add a new teams feature to the organizations, which you can see here, which allows the administrators and managers of organizations to assign the members of organizations to different teams, right? And basically this allows, well, to essentially structure your organization on ShapeDiver, and also then control by means of tagging models with the name of the different teams of the users. It allows links to make specific sets of models available to specific users in the organization. So restrict further who has access to what in the organization and organize this in a more fine-grained way. All right, so I think that's the last feature I wanted to talk about today, and we have a few more minutes for some questions, if there are some. And I think we'll even, well, we wanted to finish before the end of the hour we allowed for the webinar, but for the people that have more questions and want to stay, I think we'll stay a bit longer after the end. So I don't know if Edwin, you already...
Could you stop sharing your screen?
Yes, sorry.
All right. So we do have some questions here. Someone wanted to know if we can share the Barcelona Grasshopper file. Edwin, is that somewhere available, or is that something?
Yeah,
I
I
think
think we can share that.
we have to
I don't think
let's.
it's available somewhere yet.
Okay, so we'll add it to the tutorials.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, for the tutorials, the idea is to structure them and make them, include instructions and everything in the models. So we can already share the link, but for the tutorials, we probably have to clean it up and rework it to make it understandable.
Yeah,
But
so
yeah,
that
you can.
link we shared in the Q&A, that's basically if anyone wants to bookmark it, because we're going to be adding new examples monthly, right?
Yes.
So you can always come back there, 1 month later, and most likely there are going to be new examples added to that page, right? So that's one question. Then Peter Davis, so hi Pete, says, we have a curve and want to move each control point with a Gumball. Do we select node and Gumball node work together? Do the select node and Gumball node work together?
Yeah, I'm not sure I fully understand the question. So first of all, let me preface this by saying that I've shown, after this question was posed, I showed the drawing tools, the points input, and that would be the best way to achieve this workflow, of course, right? If you have a list of points and you want to edit a control points. But if you want to move each control point with a Gumball, I mean, you can of course select geometry using the Gumball already. So it already includes the selection, and then you can transform your object like this. So I'm not sure I understand completely. If you can precise your question, I would be happy to take it, or we can discuss it, of course, anytime.
Or you can email it.
I think it's probably answered, because I think the question is, I think what answers is that the Gumball already works as a selection tool as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect. So here, I think you already answered this one. I'm gonna project it here. Really excited, so glad to see it. There are beta drawing tools for the viewer. Do you still see this as a possible feature for App Builder? Then there's an input geometry from the front end. Any possible features for controlling the camera in Grasshopper?
Yeah, so the first question, that's I saw it briefly also before I showed the drawing tools. So have you seen, these are pretty much ready in the viewer, and we're just finalizing the component in Grasshopper and connecting everything, but that's going to be available later this month. And about the second part of the question, that's that's also requested quite often, this ability to, well, let's say with the App Builder now, we've seen ways to control the layout of the interface, the 2D layout. We've seen ways to access and geometry and click on geometry. And of course, we're thinking, we have a lot of ideas and also already working on a lot of new features for that builder, including the type of features that you're mentioning in the question. So the ability to trigger camera movements, for example, or these kind of things. When you click on a button, or maybe when you select an object in the viewer, all this kind of stuff is coming as well. But I cannot tell you what, when, because there's really a wealth of new features now, and we have to prioritize everything. But that's clearly something we're looking at.
Okay, here one comment by Heather. It's nice, love it. This custom parameter feature solves the biggest limitation that was in App Builder. All right, so glad you're happy about it. So then here's a bit of a new question, probably from someone that's new to ShapeDiver. Can you explain how do we publish the website, and can we give it a custom domain? So here you would have to visit our website. We have a how it works page, so you would need to obviously upload a Grasshopper file to ShapeDiver, have the right plan, and then embed a model on your own website. So you need to have your own website, your own domain, and then you can embed a model, and then that's how you control how you publish a model and how you control which domain that model lives in. I don't know if Mathieu, you want to add something there?
Yeah, no, that's a standard ShapeDiver feature. So if you have more questions, of course, you can get in touch, but you can upload your model, set it up in the platform, and if you want to share it or publish it somewhere in an iframe or using the API, there's various ways for various types of subscriptions.
There is one more thing that we can say from there. That is that we are working on connections to e-commerce. So in this case, for example, working in a plugin for WooCommerce in WordPress. So that's another way you can easily start using App Builder directly in WooCommerce with the new plugin that we have available.
Yeah, but you still need your own website, your own domain, your own
Correct.
things. We do not provide any of those things. You have to have them yourself. All right. So the next question, I'm testing this projecting thing. Everybody can see the question in the screen, right?
I can see that.
Yeah.
Good. Then from K1, AK1, I see you here. Great stuff. Thank you for the presentation. Will it be possible to generate technical drawings via dynamic views instead of using the 2D method? I don't know if Edwin or Matthew want to take that one.
Yeah.
How do you understand the question, Edwin?
Via dynamic views. No, I don't understand this question. Instead of using the 2D method.
Maybe the 2D method may be mixed by the YouTube tutorial that you already have.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't.
Maybe
he can clarify.
Yeah, maybe you want to rephrase the question, or you can email us. In any case, with your question. All right. Do the embedding features of App Builder allow some styling similar to the current iframe model options? Yes, and even more. So yes, you can do the basic things you were doing with iframe, but you can do way more than that, right? So with this, you have left, right, top, and bottom where you can place all of your UI, but we also give you much freedom to do many more things. Maybe Edwin, do you want to give a little bit more detail on what freedom?
Yeah. So I mean, it's true. We didn't mention this. I mean, we also have to keep some features for the in progress features for the next update we'll have in the spring probably, because this is, well, it's a bit like, we've already showed some prototype features, the dynamic parameters that can already be used, but not in a final form, the drawing tools. The styling, I would say, I would put in the same category in the sense that it's already possible. So we expose, it's essentially in the form of a big JSON object where you can send the value of various different colors, fonts, the size of different containers, a lot of things already. I think we probably have some examples of customized interfaces with App Builder, but I don't have one right now. So that's much beyond what the iframe options do, right? The iframe options are like four colors and a couple of hide and show different things. So that's already possible with a bit of handwork, because you have to put it in a JSON file and reference it from your app, which is almost like a developer type of feature. But the idea is, of course, to have a version of what we have for the iframe, which you can just have color switches and a couple of options, control that from the platform, and then create your iframe code from that. Our plan is to have a much more advanced version of this for the App Builder, right? Where you have like a full page where you can completely update your styling and stuff, and then create your embedded iframe code from the styling that you did on the platform.
Yeah.
So that's the question. The answer is yes, it's possible. There's a bit of documentation about this, and we're going to add some in the next few days and weeks. And a much better version, more user-friendly of these features is coming.
The next one here, I'm going to project it. Can you share the basic cabinets Grasshopper file? Thanks. I'm assuming we can.
Yes, we can share it. We can probably also put in the YouTube channel when we put this into YouTube.
Let's do this, yeah.
No, let's add it to the tutorials.
Yeah, so that's also, I mean, we can add a new section to the tutorials. That's more like, advanced examples or stuff. I wouldn't call it a tutorial if it's not really properly documented and everything. But yeah, let's add all the links that we can and improve them over time. Yeah.
All right. So an encouraging message from Christopher. Nice to see you here, Christopher. Impressive, great progress on work. Thank you very much. Next one. It looked like you had to trigger selection and Gumball inputs before using them. Does this have to be independently triggered?
At the moment, yes. So that's, and we've already iterated a lot on these features with early adopters since we released them. we did identify use cases where not having to trigger the selection process or even Gumball process or drawing process would be better, would be just better if it was active all the time, per se. And we will make an update soon, which allows to have a mode where you just, for now, we identified the case where you can only select one object at a time, because the thing is that we're trying to cover a broad range of use cases with these components. And in some components, it does make sense to have to trigger this process, right? Especially if you can select several objects in the viewer and then trigger a computation and look at the results. But if the goal is an application where you click and instantly it triggers a computation, and you can then click on several things and see the results associated with the selection, then it does make sense to have a mode where you don't have to retrigger every time. So yeah, the answer is yes, we will have a way to do this in the near future.
Okay, next one says, I don't have Grasshopper knowledge. I just want to ask if I want to use any type of web interaction. So I have to make Grasshopper file according to web interaction. I can't use vanilla Grasshopper script. Am I right? Well,
Yes, you need to use our, I mean, you can't, because you have to use our components to use the app builder.
yep.
Yeah, we could. I mean, I'm not sure what the intent of the question is. Of course, you have to tell in a way the ShapeDiver platform, the ShapeDiver model, that you want to let users click and interact and stuff, and you have to filter which objects should. So I'm not sure what the intent of the question was. It could be that the intent was, okay, when I'm in Grasshopper, I have a point input, for example, I can click on it and set a point from my document, and that we could interpret this directly as a way to start the selection. But the contexts are too different. That's something we thought about, and I would have loved to make this available with vanilla Grasshopper components, but the contexts are too different, and it just makes more sense to use the specific components of our plugin.
Yeah.
It was already the case years ago when we did our text input component, for example. We could have used text panels as inputs, but it was much cleaner and safer to do it with our own component in this case. So thank you.
All right. So, hi, thank you for the representation. Is it possible to use the selection tool to display selected object attributes instead of parameters, not use it as an input, but more as something to visualize attributes in the app builder containers?
Yeah, so here the question is about exactly what the use case is, but theoretically everything is possible. So I have the example I showed about the Caramba optimization of panels. My intent is to continue working on it and basically just with the selection input reproduce the attribute visualization feature that we have already on the platform. So theoretically everything is possible. We can use it to select objects, show their properties, and show data related to your selection. That's clear. But if you have a specific use case in mind,
all right.
In the example that I have of the Barcelona model, if you click on a block, then you will get also more data specifically to that block. So yeah, that's when this model is available, then you can check it, and then you will see that you can display information based on that selection.
Yeah, and I guess what's cool is that you can actually display different things depending on what was selected, right? So it doesn't have to be always the same attributes, but you can actually select different things, and based on what you selected, different information might be shown because it's completely parametric.
Okay, so here we have an OG of ShapeDiver here, Curtis. Nice that you are here. Basically, a lot of features I've been waiting for since I started using ShapeDiver, and that's many years ago. So we're glad you're happy with this. You also have another question over here. I'll share it already. It says, excited to explore the app builder more. Does this affect the compatibility of current allowed plugins?
No, not at all. And by the way, there's another question about does ShapeDiver work with mass plugins for Rhino? The answer is that we support a list of plugins. You can find it in our documentation and in your dashboard when you log in your account, which plugins are available. And the plugins you can use in the traditional platform or the app builder are the same.
And just as obviously as a reminder, ShapeDiver has about 45 plus supported third-party plugins. And when you create an account and you select your backend server, there's a list of plugins that are already installed in that system. If you try to upload a model that includes third-party plugins that are not supported on ShapeDiver, they won't work. It's like if you're trying to run a Grasshopper file and you don't have the plugins needed to run it on your computer, it won't work on ShapeDiver either. So you need to make sure that you're using either native components, scripted components, or any of the components, any of the plugins listed in the backend section of your server on ShapeDiver. Once you create an account, it's there. All right. So where did we left off? I think this one from Pete. It says, with the selection input node, your demo showed selecting one mesh face. Can you select multiple faces with dragging a selection window or clicking multiple times to select lots of faces?
Already requested, already being specified on our side. So let's see. But yeah, that's a use case that we've already got a request for. So we're looking at it. Yeah.
Perfect. Do the objects currently work in the AR viewer? I tried the basic cabinets made from the example. No. AR viewer is just an AR viewer. It's not any type. You cannot interact with the AR viewer. Basically, what we do is we generate an AR compatible file format and we send it to your device, whether it's an Android, an iPad, an iPhone, and then your device is in charge of rendering whatever AR file format we send. And then that's it. It's viewing it. You cannot interact with the model in the way you can interact in WebGL on a browser. Now, if you would want to create an AR application out of it, you could, but that's something you would need to do with development, software development, right? You would need to know your way around building an AR application. But obviously, a big part of the job would already be solved by Grasshopper and ShapeDiver, but then you would need to build that last part, which puts together that AR application. By the way, if this is new that we had an AR viewer, you should go and try it out. Super cool. You have to set the sizes properly on Grasshopper and ShapeDiver, sorry, but with the AR viewer, it's fantastic. Excited to explore. Okay, so the ShapeDiver with multiple plugins, that's already answered. Is it possible to include more complex input for parameters such as curves or shapes as user could input or upload to connect to the Grasshopper file?
So the first part of the answer is that with the drawing tools, obviously you'll be able to update a polyline, which can include, obviously, your polyline could be the control point structure of a curve or even to some extent of surfaces in your model. So that's a way that you could solve this type of workflows. The ability to control, and here I think you refer to editing curves, shapes in a more fine-grained way directly in the viewer, is not something we're planning at the moment. This would be one feature going in the direction of turning ShapeDiver into an online CAD system, and that's not what ShapeDiver is. ShapeDiver is a way to interface algorithms created by Grasshopper, but we don't plan to become an online CAD system. And in this case, even if we develop this in a lean way, the complex geometry, NURBS geometry represented in a browser, and make this equivalent to geometry as it represented in Rhino is something that's not the type of topics we want to get into right now. So.
But I mean, basically, they can, but in a different way. No, they can use our import geometry component, but then you have to have this geometry already in a 3DM file or in a EXF file in some 3D format, and we have a component in our plugin which allows you to upload files. So then you get at the end more complex geometry, but it's not geometry that was created inside ShapeDiver, but was created beforehand in some CAD software.
Yeah, and by the way, an alternative solution to this is the desktop client features, which I don't think we can start talking extensively about, but there's a way to connect a ShapeDiver model directly with your Rhino document and then edit objects and use them as inputs of the definition. So that might also solve the workflow you're trying to look at.
All right, last question of this event. Great job. My question here, do you plan to work on updating models instead of having to upload a new model for each project?
Yes, versioning. We will have it soon.
We will have it. So maybe the spring 2025 update will have some.
Let's hope so. I'm not going to promise anything, but let's hope that. I think by the next spring update we'll have a version of it. It's not one of the reasons it's getting delayed is that we want to do this properly and make it very useful. And there's lean ways to have like some version of versioning that's already solves some of the workflows of the users.
All right. So last bonus question from Rodrigo. Nice to see you here, Rodrigo. Amazing stuff. Are these features available to all ShapeDiver plans? All right. So Matthew, head of product, who can use App Builder?
Everyone can use App Builder. That's so everyone can use the App Builder components and create apps. So upload models and interact with the apps that you've created. That's something we want everyone to be able to test and play with. But then if you want, then the restrictions that apply to App Builder are pretty much the restrictions that apply to your traditional ShapeDiver models. If you want to embed them in an iframe or use the API to embed them somewhere, or share a link, share with other users, or share a private link, then you need to have the according ShapeDiver subscriptions that we already have, so we can look at all of this on the pricing page of our website, of course.
So a little bit of from the head of sales, then some context here. So free users can use it up to a point. Then designers can use it also on the platform. If you want to start embedding those models on external websites, you need Designer Plus and above. So all of our new plans have access to App Builder. Depending if you want to share them or not, you will need the right plan according to what you want. There was another one says, does the app support Graph Mapper? That was the last question.
Yeah, no, not yet, but the App Builder is a good framework to add widgets. There's more specific widgets that can do crazy stuff. So not ruling it out, probably it would not use the traditional Graph Mapper in Grasshopper, but more again like a ShapeDiver specific equivalent. But it's not on the top of our priority list right now, but that's an interesting one that we can look at in the future.
All right. So more questions were coming in, but sorry if we can't answer them all. We are available also via our support forum. So make sure to visit the forum.shapeDiver.com.
And I wanted to mention again, I didn't have a lot of people in the last few weeks, probably because I don't advertise it a lot. I'm doing community catch-ups every week. Right now they're on Tuesdays. And anyone is welcome to join. And if you join, you tell me what you want to talk about, if you have problems, if you want to look at the features. And we kind of have this informal update on what's happening on our site. So especially if we could not answer some of your questions right now, go to your ShapeDiver account, go to community, catch up, sign up for the next one, and I'll be happy to discuss with you.
All right. Matthias, any closing statements?
Well, I'll keep it short because we've already used a lot of your time. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for your interest. I was looking at the numbers during the webinar, and it was pretty stable. Everyone was really hopefully liking what they saw. If there's anything else you want to ask us, again, as Mathieu already said, use the forum, use the different ways we provide also on your account pages to reach us and to ask the questions that are important to you. It's always very important for us to hear from you, to learn what the next features are that you would like to see in ShapeDiver that would make your life and your work easier. And and we're going to do our best to make ShapeDiver the best product it can be and the most useful it can be for you. So thanks for your attention. Thanks for joining. It was great having all of you. And see you at the next webinar. Have a great evening.
Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.